This tofu is made out of green peas, this one is made out of red lentils, and this one is made out of olive green lentils. You can fry them like tofu, you can slice them like tofu, and you can serve them like tofu. All of these tofus have one thing in common. They're made out of legumes. What exactly are legumes, you wonder? They're part of a large family of flowering plants called Fabaceae. But basically they're nothing else than the seeds from which those plants grow. It's crazy to think that all of these chickpeas have the potential to grow into a plant like this. But that's exactly what legumes are. And because most legumes have a similar chemical composition, we can use them for similar things. For now that means turning them into tofu. But before you rush off and really use any legume to make tofu, please watch the warning at the end of the video because there are some differences you should know about. But for now, let's make our tofu. Today we're using dried green peas, red lentils and olive green lentils to see how each of them turns into a Burmese-style tofu. But don't use tinned legumes for this. They are already pre-cooked and don't have the same properties as dried legumes anymore, so they won't set as well. In my last video I already mentioned that this type of tofu is actually Burmese tofu, not Chinese tofu, which is the tofu you'd usually get at your grocery stores. So the texture is a little bit different, which I'll show you later on. The principle here is always the same. Start by soaking 100 grams of your dried green peas overnight or for at least 8 hours in plenty of water. They will expand a lot, so make sure to choose a large enough bowl for this and cover them with at least 3 times their volume in water. Just to compare, this is before soaking and this one is after soaking. The next day you can strain them through a fine sieve and you won't need the leftover soaking water anymore. Now grab your high-speed blender and add the soaked peas together with 250 milliliters of fresh water. Switch it on and blend it until completely smooth. At this point you can also add flavors like ginger and chili if you like. Check out my previous video if you want to see how. After you've blended it for around 1 minute, pour all of the liquid into a frying pan. The starches in the peas will sink to the bottom and stick, so a non-stick frying pan is your best choice here. Season it with half a teaspoon salt and stir it well to combine. Then turn on the heat and keep stirring it until it begins to thicken into a paste. At this point turn the heat to low and continue stirring the paste for another 2 to 3 minutes until it sticks to the spatula like this and hardly moves when you tilt the pan. Then transfer the paste to a 500 milliliter mold, smoothen out the top and let it set for around 1 hour, ideally in the fridge. After 1 hour, this is the result. The tofu has set and easily pulls away from the sides. You should be able to turn it out like this and slice it with a knife. If it hasn't set properly, then your piece might still be raw and you should not eat the tofu. Instead, cook it a little longer with a bit more water and try again. If it has set properly, you can eat them straight away. Or cut them into cubes like this, which you can fry together with some oil and salt in a non-stick frying pan, turning them once until they look crispy. So here's why it actually works. When you're heating the liquid, you're changing the protein bonds in the legumes, which means that together with the starches, they form into a thick paste that then sets into a soft block as it cools down. And now we're gonna try the same thing with red lentils. Technically, you don't need to soak split red lentils. They are thin enough and they will break down straight away. But soaking generally makes legumes more digestible, so with a short cooking time like for our tofu, it's always a good idea. Start again with 100 grams of lentils and soak them in plenty of water overnight. And they will still expand like this. The next day, drain them through a fine sieve and blend them again with 250 milliliters of fresh water for about 1 minute or until completely smooth. Then pour it into a non-stick frying pan along with half a teaspoon salt and cook the liquid again until it thickens into a similar paste as before. Now it's time to transfer it into a mold and let it cool down until set. And there you have it, a Burmese-style tofu made out of red lentils that you can cut into cubes and fry again in some oil and with salt until crispy. And if you're wondering what the texture is like, it's not like your Chinese tofu, which is made with curdled milk. Instead, this one is like a thick paste that has set. You can crumble it like normal tofu, but it holds its shape really well and is a nutritious source of protein since we've used all of the legumes without wasting anything. Now for the last test we're using olive green lentils, but in case you're wondering why are we even making it with 3 different legumes, here's why. Being able to make this type of tofu out of any legume means that we are less dependent on a single crop for our plant-based protein intake. And that means that we can support a wider and healthier growing process through our diet. After all, legumes are drivers of biodiversity. They are nitrogen-fixing crops, which means that they pull nitrogen from the atmosphere and store it in the soil, thereby limiting the need for chemical fertilizers. Now back to our tofu. We have fried it again until crispy, but now let me show you a delicious way to serve it. For that you will need 20 grams of ginger that are julienne, 8 spring onions cut into larger chunks, 3 grated garlic cloves, and 1 thinly sliced chili. We'll also make a simple sauce with 2 tablespoons of soy sauce, 1 tablespoon of rice wine vinegar, 1 tablespoon of mirin, and 1 teaspoon of sesame oil. Now heat some oil in the pan and add the ginger and spring onions, followed by the garlic. When the garlic smells nice and aromatic, add the sauce and let it cook for a moment. Now add your tofu together with the chilies and toss it to combine. I usually finish it with a little bit of chopped coriander and some toasted sesame seeds. And that's a quick and easy way to serve your legume tofu. Guten Appetit! What they do really well is they soak up all of the flavors. So the mirin, the rice vinegar, the soy sauce, they're all soaked up in these little cubes. And the texture is actually really close to firm tofu. It doesn't have the same chewiness. It holds the shape really well. Look at that. But this just blows my mind every time, because it's so exciting that we can take any legume, especially if they're grown locally, and turn it into something completely new. And because there's no waste with this tofu, we actually didn't change the nutritional values that much. Sure, we've broken down the fibers a little bit, but chances are that if you're on a plant-based diet, you already eat a lot of legumes anyway. So this creates an entirely new texture to actually eat them. So I served this with Asian-style aromatics today, but you can try it in different things, like an Indian-inspired curry, or in a salad with a really punchy vinegary dressing. And that's how you make tofu out of any legume. But there needs to be a word of warning there, because although you can make tofu out of any legume in theory, they need to be cooked properly to be safe to consume. Basically, legumes contain natural toxins so that they're not eaten by predators in the wild. As humans, we developed a solution to that because we soak them and boil them, which breaks down the toxins. For most chickpeas, peas and lentils, the cooking time today is enough to do that. But some beans, for example, like red or white kidney beans, they contain a different chemical called phytohemagglutinin, and they need to be cooked longer. You can still make tofu out of them, but you would either need to add more water and increase the cooking time to around 20 minutes minimum, or you can follow my last video where I strained the liquid, and that would get rid of any coarser particles that wouldn't cook in time. If you want to be on the safe side, just start with chickpeas or any of the legumes we use in this video today. Having said that, I've eaten the tofus that I made many times and I never ran into any issues. They're versatile, they're delicious, and they're really fun to experiment with, so I hope you're gonna give them a go. You can find a link to the recipe in the description below, and thanks for watching. With your support, I'm hoping to bust the myths of the modern vegan diet by offering a natural, plant-based approach instead. And as always, wunderbar!